Hi, I'm Stacy and I'm the owner of Montana Used Bricks. Today we're going to talk about starting your Bricklink store. As you probably already know, there's a lot of paperwork and such you have to fill out with Bricklink in order to get your store up and running. This is to verify that you are a legitimate seller. They started this probably, well, within the last 5 years, because when I started, all you had to do was say, yeah, I want to sell and open your store. You didn't have to verify anything. Also, about the time I started, there was a lot of scammers and they were posting, expensive sets like the Millennium Falcon or the Green Grocer, and then they would get somebody to buy it, take their money, close the store, and the buyer was out all that money. So they started to really crack down on that. So they now have a whole verification process you have to go through. You have to send in, all kinds of paperwork to Bricklink. You have to post pictures of you with your inventory so they know you actually have it. And this process can take, the website says 2 weeks, but I've been seeing on the forums it can actually take up to several months before you're able to open your store. So basically, I don't want to so much talk about that process because that's pretty self-explanatory. There's the help on Bricklink, and there's also lots of stuff in the forums on that process. What I kind of want to talk about is what do you do during that 2 to 4 weeks before your store opens? The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you have inventory. Make sure that whatever you're selling is in there correctly at the price that you want it. Definitely double check the price. My very first order, I had the wrong price in there and I lost a lot of money on my very first order. So I learned real quick to double check the prices. But during this 2 week period, you're going to want to do that. And if you have parts available, just start adding them to your store. Or if you have sets, get those added to your store during that 2 weeks. Which also brings up another question that I've seen a lot in the forums and a lot of people wonder about is how many bricks do you need to get started? How many parts? How many sets? And that's totally up to you. If you have just a collection, your own collection that you're selling off, you can have, as little as 5 or 6 sets. They probably won't sell very fast because that's all you're offering, but if you have more parts, more sets, more lots, then you're going to get a lot more people in your store and you're going to get a lot more people to buy from your store. But I started my store, I think, between 10 and 20,000 parts. So I didn't have that many. So I was getting maybe one order a week, which at the time I thought was awesome. So it really depends on how much you have. Right now we have about 93,000 parts in stock, and we still average probably 1 to 3 orders a day. I'd really like to get that back up to 100,000, but it takes a lot of time when you're dealing with used parts to get those into inventory. One of the other things you can do during this process is you can actually order from other stores. When you do the verification through Bricklink, they are going to ask you for one positive feedback. But if you have the money, I would suggest ordering from 3 or 4 stores. The reason I suggest this is because when you get those orders, you're going to see how they're packed. You're going to have that interaction with that store to see how they handle different things. Maybe there's even a problem with one of those orders, and you can get a chance to see how that store handles that issue. Hopefully there won't be, but it does happen. But it just gives you kind of an idea of what it's like from the buyer's point of view. And if there's things about that order that you like, you can incorporate that into your store. If there's things that you don't like, you can make sure you avoid when you do yours. That's what the wonderful thing about Bricklink is the store is very much yours. You can run it any way you want, and you can make it unique to you and your personality and your lifestyle, which is one of the reasons I love running my Bricklink store is because I have control. I have to follow Bricklink's terms and conditions, but beyond that, I get to decide how things are done. Speaking of terms and conditions, one of the things you might want to do is look at some of the other stores' terms and conditions to see what they have written, what kind of terms and conditions they have. Some stores will only have one or two lines of conditions. Mine is like probably a page long because I want to cover anything that might happen during the transaction. I'm not sure a lot of people read the terms and conditions, no matter how many times you ask them to, at different places on your store site. Most of them won't take the time. I personally read the terms and conditions before I order just to make sure that I understand what they're expecting from me and what I can expect from them. Also, in the terms and conditions, if you have any additional fees, you're going to want to state those in your terms and conditions. So the buyer is aware before they purchase that you do have these extra fees. I personally don't have fees. I do have a minimum buy in my store of $1.75 because for me, if somebody buys $1.75 worth of parts, then that's going to be enough for me to at least break even on all the fees, the packing supplies, and everything else. So I don't have fees, but I do have a minimum buy. But you're going to want to be very clear in your store terms what those are. The other thing you might want to do is take a look at other stores to see how they handle the shipping costs. See if they do international or domestic, and I'll do a whole nother video on that. But just see how they handle their shipping costs. For me as a buyer, because I do buy quite a bit on Bricklink, as a buyer, I don't tend to buy from stores that have really high shipping costs because I know that they're padding that, but I also know that they're doing that to get a little bit of extra money out of it. Personally, I'd rather see them have a minimum buy or just flat out have the packing fees separate so that I know, and then have the shipping costs as close to the actual cost as possible. And that's what I do in my store is I have the shipping costs at what I pay basically. Um, and I don't have any extra fees. I just have that minimum buy. But that's me personally. Like I said, you know, this whole video series that I'm doing is all based on my store, my opinion, and that sort of thing. Each store is unique. That's why I tell you go out and read those terms and conditions, read the shipping costs, just to give you an idea of what you might want to do for your store. The other thing you can do is create a splash page. Uh, a splash page is a good way to let the buyer know about you. You can use that splash page to maybe even reiterate some of the major points in your terms and conditions, or you can use it to tell them how and why you're selling on Bricklink. You could use it to highlight maybe some of the stuff that you're building if you're creating mocks, or if you have a specific collection that you're trying to build up. It just gives the buyer a chance to get to know you and your store. And I really enjoy reading some of those splash pages that really go into detail about why they're there and maybe what their mocks are or what sets they're collecting. I find that a lot of fun. I do kind of hit a lot of stores just to see what everybody else is doing. The last thing I would suggest that you do in this 2 week to 4 week period while you're waiting for your store to open is peruse the forums. Go out, especially the problem and help sections. That way you can see when somebody posts a problem, you can see how both the buyer and the sellers react. I've gone out there before and said, hey, I had this buyer who did this or said that, how would you handle it? And it's really interesting to see how those other stores would do it. And I have taken quite a few of those suggestions and incorporated it into my process. So that would be a big thing to do. So those are just some ideas of what to do while you're waiting for your store to be verified. Like I said, each store is unique and special and different. And so, if you ask 5 different sellers what, their top 5 ideas would be while during this 2 week period, you're going to get 5 different answers probably from each store. If there are any sellers out there that are watching this, if you have any additional ideas on what people can do while they're waiting during that time period to get verified, please put it in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. If you have anything that I might have missed or any other additional comments, because always learning. I've been doing this for 5 years and I still learn every time I go out in the forums or talk to a Bricklink seller. If you enjoyed this video or you found it informative, give it a thumbs up and I will see you in the next video.